To my daughter, Lila, I leave the entirety of my estate valued at $2.4 million, contingent upon one specific condition. She must submit to a DNA test to prove she is my biological child. Mr. Whitaker read my father's final insult without looking up from the paper. Across the table, my sister Fallon didn't look sad. She laughed. She actually laughed. She pulled out her phone, hit record, and pointed the camera right at my face, waiting for me to break down. My mother, Denise, covered her mouth in fake shock, but I saw her eyes scanning the documents, already calculating how to spend the money she thought I was about to lose. They thought this was the moment I was destroyed. They saw me trembling and assumed I was terrified of the truth. But under the table, my hands were steady. I wasn't shaking from fear. I was shaking because I knew something they didn't. I wasn't the one walking into a trap. They were. Before I show you the piece of paper that destroyed my mother's life in 3 seconds, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And have you ever had a secret that could burn your whole family down? Mr. Whitaker, I stammered, letting my voice crack just enough to sound pathetic. Can we handle this without the test? I don't want to drag Dad's name through the mud. I slumped in my chair, wrapping my arms around myself like a frightened child. To them, I looked like a woman on the verge of losing everything. They saw a 30-year-old failure who had spent the last 5 years wiping up vomit and changing adult diapers. They didn't see Lila, the forensic accountant who had spent a decade auditing shell companies and hunting down hidden assets for federal indictments. They saw the mask, not the auditor. Fallon snorted, the sound sharp and ugly in the quiet room. Oh, please, now she cares about Dad's name? You're just terrified because you know the truth. You're a genetic error, Lila, a bad investment Dad finally decided to write off. I looked at my mother, pleading with my eyes. Mom, please, we don't need to do this. The estate is worth $2.4 million. Let's agree to split it 3 ways. We burn the test, we all walk away with $800,000. That's enough for everyone. It was the perfect bait. I offered them safety. I offered them a guaranteed win. A rational person would have taken the money, but I wasn't dealing with rational people. I was dealing with narcissists who had spent decades building a throne on top of my back. This is what we in the industry call the sunk cost of greed. It wasn't just about the money anymore. For 30 years, Denise and Fallon had invested everything into a specific narrative, that they were the royalty of this family and I was the servant. To accept a settlement, to accept an equal share, would mean admitting that I was on their level. It would mean liquidating their ego, and that was a cost they simply couldn't afford to pay. They didn't just want to win, they needed me to lose. Denise looked at me, and for a second, I saw the greed warring with caution. Then she leaned over to Fallon. She whispered loud enough for the microphone on the table to catch it, but soft enough that she thought I couldn't hear. Sign it. Brooks was in a full leg cast in the hospital for 6 weeks the month she was conceived. It is physically impossible that she is his. She's bluffing. That was her ace in the hole, a false memory, a biological fact she had convinced herself was true to sleep at night. She wasn't gambling. In her mind, she was betting on a fixed race. Denise straightened up, her face hardening into a mask of superiority. Absolutely not. Your father's wishes were clear. He wanted his biological family to inherit. If you aren't his, you don't deserve a penny. We reject your offer. Then what do you want? I asked, looking down at my hands to hide the calculation in my eyes. We want a stipulation, Fallon said, leaning forward, her eyes bright with malice. Winner takes all. If the DNA test proves you aren't Dad's, you get 0. You move out of the house immediately, you leave us alone forever, and the entire $2.4 million goes to us. Mr. Whitaker looked at me over his glasses. Lila, do you understand what they are asking? If you sign this and the test is negative, you leave with nothing. I took a shaky breath. If that is what it takes to prove I'm his daughter, fine, I'll sign. Mr. Whitaker typed up the stipulation. The printer whirred in the corner, the only sound in the room. He slid the paper across the mahogany table. Denise signed it with a flourish. Fallon signed it with a jagged, aggressive scrawl. I picked up the pen. My hand trembled, but not from fear. It was the vibration of a trap snapping shut. I signed my name. "It's done," Denise said, reaching for the folder. "Now, when can we schedule this test?" I set the pen down. The act was over. I stopped slouching. I stopped shaking. I looked up, and for the first time that day, I let them see my real eyes. Mr. Whitaker pressed his notary stamp onto the document. The thud echoed off the glass walls like a gavel striking a block. The contract was legal, binding, irreversible. While the ink dried, I looked across the table at Fallon. She was checking her reflection in the darkened screen of her phone, adjusting a stray lock of hair. She looked perfect, rested, expensive. She looked like someone who had spent the last 5 years in Miami and Joshua Tree curating a feed of wellness retreats and positive vibes, while I was drowning in a sea of antiseptic and bodily fluids. They say you can't put a price on family. I disagree. As a forensic accountant, I put a price on everything. I closed my eyes for a second, and the smell hit me. Not the leather of the law office, but the phantom stench of bleach and decay that had clung to my skin for 1,800 days. I remembered the 3 a.m. alarms to turn my father so he wouldn't get bed sores. I remembered the sound of the feeding tube pump, a rhythmic mechanical click that became the soundtrack of my insomnia. I remembered the way he would scream at me when the dementia took hold, calling me a thief, a stranger, a burden, while I wiped the vomit from his chin. Where was Denise then? She was at energy workshops in Santa Fe, spending Dad's pension on essential oils to realign her aura. Where was Fallon? She was posting throwbacks of Daddy's Girl on Instagram for likes, captioning them with heart emojis, while I was arguing with insurance adjusters about the cost of adult diapers. They looked at me now with my slumped shoulders, messy bun, and dark circles, and they saw a defeat. They saw a woman who had wasted her prime years being a maid. They didn't understand that I hadn't just been cleaning up messes, I had been auditing them. I didn't quit my job as a senior forensic auditor at a top-tier firm because I was soft, or because I had nothing else going on, as Dad liked to tell the neighbors. I quit because I knew that if I wasn't there to watch the money, Denise would have drained the accounts dry before the cancer even took him. I stayed to protect the asset. I stayed because I knew that one day this moment would come. I looked at my mother. She was smiling now, a small, tight expression of victory. She thought she had just secured her retirement. She thought the years of neglect, the years of treating me like hired help she didn't have to pay, were about to pay off. They didn't understand that every time they mocked me for being single, for living in that house, for having no life, I was adding a line item to a mental ledger. Every insult was a debit. Every missed birthday was interest. This $2.4 million wasn't a gift. It wasn't a windfall. It was back pay. It was severance. It was the invoice for 5 years of slavery, and I was finally ready to collect. "Mr. Whitaker," I said, my voice dropping the tremble, smoothing out into the cool professional tone I used to use when testifying in federal fraud cases, "I don't need 7 days." Denise frowned, confusion flickering behind her eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't need a week to get a DNA test," I said, reaching into my tote bag. "I prepared for this." I reached into my bag, but I didn't pull out a tissue to wipe away my tears. I pulled out a heavy cream-colored envelope sealed with red security tape. I slid it across the mahogany table until it rested directly in front of Mr. Whitaker. "Sir," I said, my voice steady and devoid of the tremble I faked 5 minutes ago, "this is a certified medical examiner's report notarized this morning at 8 a.m. It contains a comprehensive genetic analysis comparing my DNA, Fallon's DNA, and the post-mortem samples taken from my father during his autopsy." Mr. Whitaker looked at the envelope, then at me. He saw the change. The slumped shoulders were gone. The fear was gone. He picked up the envelope, slit the seal with his letter opener, and pulled out the documents. The room was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning. Denise's smile faltered. Fallon lowered her phone slightly, her brow furrowed in confusion. They were waiting for him to dismiss it, to tell me I was desperate. Mr. Whitaker read the first page. He flipped to the second. Then he slowly took off his reading glasses and looked at my mother. It wasn't a look of sympathy, it was a look of professional horror. That look was all the validation I needed. Now, I said, standing up, let me show you what he's reading. I pulled my laptop from my bag and connected it to the cable in the center of the table. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. Slide 1, I said. The screen displayed a simple bar graph. Subject A, Lila, 99.9998% paternal match to Brooks. I am Brooks's biological daughter, I said, looking directly at Fallon. The test you demanded, I passed. The genetic error, that wasn't me. Denise let out a breath, a high, thin sound. She thought she was safe. She thought the worst-case scenario was that we split the money. She had forgotten the contract she'd just signed. Winner takes all. But Dad didn't just want to know if I was his, I continued, clicking the next key. He wanted to secure the bloodline. So, as his medical proxy, I authorized a full familial comparison. Slide 2. The graph on the screen plummeted. Subject B, Fallon, 0.00% paternal match to Brooks. Fallon dropped her phone. It hit the table with a crack. "What is this?" Denise whispered, her face draining of color until she looked like a wax figure. "This is fake. You forged this." "Mr. Whitaker is holding the certified original," I said coldly. "And since you were so confident about Dad's broken leg, let's talk about where he actually was 30 years ago. He was in traction. You were working late shifts as a receptionist at the clinic." I clicked the final key. Slide 3. 2 photos appeared side by side. On the left, a candid shot of Fallon from her Instagram. On the right, a headshot of a man from a hospital directory dated 1994. Dr. Nathaniel Rowe, Denise's old boss. The resemblance wasn't just close, it was undeniable. The same hooded eyes, the same weak chin, the same slightly crooked nose Fallon had spent thousands trying to correct. "It turns out," I said, my voice filling the dead silence of the room, "that biology doesn't care about your narrative, Mom. Fallon isn't a Brooks. She never was. And according to the document you just forced me to sign, she inherits absolutely nothing." "Fine," Denise snapped, her voice trembling with rage and panic. She shoved the folder away like it was radioactive. "Keep the estate, keep the house, keep the stocks. I don't care." She straightened her designer blouse, rebuilding the mask. "The insurance policy is separate. It's a $1 million payout, and I'm the sole beneficiary. The will doesn't touch that. Neither does this ridiculous science project." She looked at Mr. Whitaker, desperate. "Tell her, Charles, the insurance is mine." Mr. Whitaker didn't answer. He was looking at me. I let out a low, humorless laugh, the sound of a forensic auditor watching a CEO shred documents after the subpoenas have already been issued. "You still don't get it, do you?" I asked. "You think Dad demanded this DNA test because he doubted me? Mom, he knew I was his. He demanded it to prove who you were." Cynthia's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "The prenup," I said. "I read it. Dad couldn't divorce you without losing half his business, so he built a Trojan horse." I tapped the laptop again. A scanned insurance policy appeared. Section 8. Moral turpitude clause. If the beneficiary engaged in paternity fraud, the policy is voidable. "You can't prove that applies here," Denise hissed. "That takes years." "It would," I agreed, "if I hadn't already faxed the examiner's report and supplemental DNA analysis to the insurer's fraud division at 8:05 this morning." The color drained from her face. "I flagged the claim, Mom. The payout is frozen. No one is getting that million, maybe ever." "You reported your own mother?" she whispered. "I reported a crime," I corrected. "Here's your situation. The investigation opens, subpoenas go out, Dr. Rowe's family gets questioned, and if you fight this, you won't just lose the money, you'll go to prison." I slid a single page across the table, a release of interest waiver. "You sign this, you walk away free." She stared at it like a trap, because it was. Her signature came shaky. Final. I took the deed. "We're done," I said. "You have 24 hours to vacate. Anything left behind gets donated." I thought that was the end, but the most dangerous moment with a narcissist isn't when you take their money, it's when you take their mask. Fallon moved fast, blocking the exit, eyes wild. "You think you can walk away?" she whispered. Then she destroyed the room and went live. "Help! My sister's attacking me." Thousands watched. I stayed still. "Selena, look up," I said calmly. She didn't. "Look up." A dome camera blinked red. Probate-grade recording running the entire time. Her phone lowered. The comments shifted. The officers arrived, the cuffs clicked. I handed over the eviction notice. "Broadcast over," I said, ending the stream. Denise didn't leave like a queen. She left escorted. I went home to silence. I opened my laptop. Investigation pending. Good enough. Then I opened the spreadsheet. 5 years of labor, $300,000. I deleted it. Clean ledger, clean break. They thought I was the maid. They forgot the maid holds the keys to every room, and now I was the only one left inside. If this story stayed with you longer than the video itself, don't walk away. Subscribe. This channel is for people who actually feel what they hear. And if you've ever had to become the villain in someone else's story just to survive your own, comment and share this with someone who needs it.